Hey guys, welcome to Haunted Tales from the Old Rocking Chair. This is your host, Christina. We'll be getting started here in a couple minutes. Tonight we got some interesting stories about doppelgangers, slash possible body snatchers, some ghost kids. There's a lot of there's a couple of stories I think with ghost kids in them. And then maybe an appearance of Death himself. So it should be an interesting podcast. We got about 2 more minutes before we get started. So settle in, get ready, and I've got a really good podcast planned. There's some really, really, really good stories in this one. So I'm kind of excited. And I'm excited to be doing original content again. Yay! It was nice going back and listening and going over some of the ones that I've already done and doing a best of. But I'm glad to be recording again and doing original stories again. So, I hope you guys enjoyed as much as I did recording it. So, I'm looking forward to it. Okay, so we got about a minute. Hopefully, cross your fingers, guys, we don't have technical difficulties this week like last week, because that was a friggin' nightmare. But I think I got it pretty well figured out. Gotta turn my speaker on so you can hear things. That would be smart. So, I see you, Jerry. Hi, Jerry. Jerry listens every week. Alright, so it's about that time, so we're going to go ahead and get it started. So just bear with me with the new setup. I'm just hoping things work like they're supposed to. Play, please. I think it's got to think before it'll play. There we go. You got me worried there for a second. Let me turn it up.
Would like to welcome you to tonight's special broadcast. This work is protected by Creative Commons license. And now, a word from our sponsors. The Skeleton Key. This mystical shop, found exclusively on Facebook, is stationed in Blossom, Texas. Purchase all of your very own unique religious, spiritual, and metaphysical items, to include the beginner altar kits. Find them today on Facebook. Remember, you've always had the key. Purchase all of your very own unique religious, spiritual, and metaphysical items, to include the beginner altar kits. Find them today on Facebook. Remember, you've always had the key. altar kits. Find them today on Facebook. Remember, you've always had to keep
The old rocking chair.
Into the living room.
And now your host, Christina Spencer.
Purchase all of your very own unique religious, spiritual, and metaphysical items, to include the beginner altar kits. Find them today on Facebook. Remember, you've always had to keep.
Oh, now we're on a different thing.
And now your host, Christina Spencer.
Something's worse.
Purchase all of your very own unique religious, spiritual, and metaphysical items, to include the beginner altar kits. Find them today on Facebook. Remember.
Whoa. I broke something. Let me try this again. I don't know what was going on there. I hope I didn't, like, screw something really bad up. Oh my goodness. I know. I hope I didn't, like, foobar it. Yeah, it had like this weird loop thingy going on. I don't know what was going on there.
Was the commercial, the introduction, and what you were just
Yeah, it was
said,
like
your
doing a
reaction to
constant loop thing. Let's see if I can fix it. Jiggle the handle. Right, Jerry? Like,
Prices range from $8 to $13.
Okay,
Private group
I
rates
think
are
we got it
available.
now.
Learn more and investigate the tales of Mary Baldwin from the Mary Baldwin College, the Old Western State Mental Asylum, and much more. For tour times, ticket prices, and dates, visit their website at www.ghostofstaunton.com or call 540-448-2743. Available tour dates are limited and filling up fast. Make sure to secure your reservations for this fall season. Get out of the house and become a part of history. The Ghost of Staunton Tours, only in Virginia's Shenandoah Valley. CDC guidelines are followed, and for questions, please visit www.ghostofstaunton.com or call 540-448-2743.
Welcome to the haunted tales
I really did
from the old
say
rocking
that.
chair.
That's scary.
And now your host, Christina Spencer.
My computer tried to have a meltdown. It was doing the time warp. Or it's just doing the 2020. Well, hello there. Come on in and get cozy by the fireplace. Let me get settled into my old rocking chair, and I'll tell you a couple stories. Haunting stories. Stories that are not for the faint of heart. Some of these stories may not be about hauntings per se, but nonetheless will haunt you. Because after all, some of the most scary things in life are not ghosts and demons, but the people we cross on the street. If you're brave enough, keep listening. If not, get up and leave now, because you'll never be the same. Don't say I didn't warn you. Welcome to the haunting stories from the old rocking chair. Wife. Written by user champion_of_bear. I got home from work one day and took off my jacket exhausted. I slumped into the living room and crashed hard on the couch. After a few minutes of relaxing, I let myself shut my eyes and drift off, but I was suddenly awoken when I heard the sound of the door opening. I rubbed the sleep from my eyes and began to hear a cheery voice. "Hello, baby, I'm home." I could recognize that voice anywhere. It sounded so uplifting and friendly to the ear. It belonged to my beautiful woman that I married only a few months before. I was still lounging on the couch with my eyes shut, but I could still imagine her coming in through the door in her dirty work uniform. She would feel so exhausted but look so beautiful. The sound of her voice made me almost fully wake up. I began to sit up and wipe the sleep from my eyes. I thought it was a little strange for a moment because, well, I don't think I've heard her call me baby like that in the 3 years we've known each other. Was everything all right? "Honey, is that you?" I asked. "Yes," she responded. "I just walked in." I put my feet on the floor and was ready to stand up and go see my beautiful wife, but I heard her voice again before I could get up. "I'm going to take a shower. I feel kind of gross and I want to clean myself up real quick." As she began to finish her sentence, the sound of her voice got further and further away. I assumed that she was walking up the stairs. I realized that I wouldn't be able to see her before she got in the shower, so I laid back down on the couch and almost immediately felt relaxed again. As I laid, a thought kept coming to me. I kept thinking about how much more comfortable I would be on the bed in her bedroom upstairs, and I knew I was right. It would. As much as I didn't want to get up off the couch, I knew that it would be much nicer lying under the covers with proper pillows under my head. I heard the water turn on upstairs. My wife had just gotten in the shower. Then another thought came to me. I would be able to see her when she got out of the shower. She would feel clean and pretty once again, and she'd be fully ready to sit and talk with me about her day. It only took another few seconds before I fully convinced myself. I began to sluggishly rise off the couch and make the long trek over to the stairs in the front hallway. I started to slowly ascend them, but I froze when I heard the front door open behind me. I nervously wheeled around and saw my beautiful wife standing in the doorway. She was dressed in her usual work uniform as she aggressively shook off the dirt of her shoes. She finally looked up and spotted me on the stairs. "Hello, dearest," she greeted. I did not respond. I just stared at my wife, agape. She took off her purse and withdrew her phone. She looked slightly exhausted as she began to tap randomly around the screen, but she quickly looked back at me once she realized I was standing frozen. Her face became concerned. "Is everything all right?" she asked after a moment of silence. Just then, the water shot off upstairs. It only took a moment for me to realize that whatever had come into my house a few moments before, whatever thing was standing in my bathroom at this moment, whatever it was not my wife. Whatever was in the shower had turned it off upon hearing my real wife come through the door. I quickly turned back around and bolted up the stairs, focusing my attention on the closed bathroom door ahead of me. I threw it open and looked over at the shower. It was wet, and the curtain had obviously been flung open, but no one was inside. "Is everything all right?" my wife worriedly shouted from downstairs. I didn't respond. I looked around the bathroom for any trace of the creature that was in there. I spotted a trail of wet footprints next to the shower. I followed them over to the bathroom window. It was wide open, which allowed for a large gust of wind to waft through the house. I peered out the window and saw deep claw marks in the grass outside. They were inhumanly large, and they led into the forest behind the house. I just took a DNA test. Turns out I'm 100% in over my head. Written by user sleepyhollow_101. You can also check out her website at www.facebook.com/Rvynelx. I did one of those at-home DNA testing kits. You know the ones. They can supposedly tell you your ancestral makeup, help you connect with long-lost relatives, that sort of thing. The specific test I used had the option to make your DNA available to law enforcement. That way, if there was a partial DNA match to a crime scene or victim, my DNA may help law enforcement identify the perpetrator. Maybe I shouldn't have opted in. The thing is, I've read about these a lot in the news. If you're a true crime fan, you know that these kits can sometimes lead police to catch decades-old serial killers and rapists that have long eluded capture. My thinking was that if one of my family members is actually a monster, well, I would want them behind bars, regardless of who it is. So I opted in, but never really considered the possibility that they'd be a match. And then there was. I was contacted by my local police department and notified that my DNA had been a partial match to a Jane Doe, and they'd like my help in identifying her. That was honestly not what I was expecting. I was a match for a dead woman. The police explained to me that our DNA profiles indicates we may have been related, and that we wanted to know if I knew of any relatives who had gone missing or hadn't been heard of in the past 5 years. 5 years? Yes, because they've determined her time of death was about 5 years ago based on the state of her body when it was found. They've reason to believe it's a homicide, although they weren't able to tell me the cause of death. Apparently, due to the state of her remains, it was impossible to tell. Well, I didn't know of any family members who've gone missing, but I don't know my extended family all that well. I decided to get my mother involved, who does genealogy. She worked with the police going through our family tree, but ultimately we couldn't find anyone. So someone we did know we were related to, possibly. At this point, we decided to talk to the rest of my family, immediate and extended, to see if anyone else knew anything. Most of our family members thought it was pretty cool and wanted to see the mystery solved, though a few were angry at me for giving my DNA to law enforcement in the first place. The police showed us a sketch of what they think the woman would have looked like, and my mother and I agreed she had some resemblance to my Aunt Linda, particularly in the strong brow and high cheekbones. The police decided to ask Aunt Linda and her 2 children, Ethan and Bex, to submit DNA samples. They agreed. It took about 2 weeks to hear back from the police after their samples had been submitted. They probably weren't at the top of the priority list for the crime lab. But when they did get the results back, they asked Bex and Aunt Linda specifically to come down to the station. Bex actually asked me to come with her. She and I were really close growing up, basically best friends. We've lost touch over the years, but I still consider her a close friend. I agreed to go in with her, even though I wasn't sure why she wanted me there. When the police told us what they found, to say I was shocked is an understatement. The DNA from Jane Doe was an exact match to Bex. Of course, my initial thought was there had to have been some sort of mistake. I asked what the likelihood is that the DNA matched Bex without actually coming from her. 1 in 5.4 billion, they said. They told us that this was extremely perplexing and that they had no explanation for the match. I asked Aunt Linda if Bex had an identical twin that nobody knew about, but she shook her head. The police told us that identical twins don't actually have perfect identical DNA anyway, so that couldn't explain the match. I was perturbed. I'm sure you can imagine why. Bex and Aunt Linda, though, were not. They laughed, actually laughed, when the police presented them with their evidence and shrugged it off. "Isn't that just the weirdest thing?" said Aunt Linda. They were both smiling and giggling the rest of the time, which clearly made the police uncomfortable. They told the police that they had hoped Jane Doe could be identified one day, but that they were pretty sure they couldn't help any further, and then left the police station. I followed after them in a daze, confused both by what the police had told us and by Bex and Aunt Linda's behavior. On the way home, I asked Bex if it truly didn't bother her. She said, "Come on, Veronica, there's obviously been some mistake. It's just not possible for DNA to match exactly with a dead woman's. Cops screwed something up, and they'll probably figure it out in a few days and call us and apologize. Don't worry about it so much." I tried to take her advice. My mom even agreed with her, saying it had to be some sort of error and that it would get cleared up sooner or later. 3 days after we spoke to the police, Bex, Ethan, and Aunt Linda vanished. My mom had just gone over to their place to borrow some family photo albums from Aunt Linda to discover that the front door was unlocked and open. Nobody was inside. We tried to reach them on their cell phones, but were informed that their numbers had been disconnected. Nothing was missing from the house. They didn't take any personal belongings. Their cars were in the garage. It was like they just vanished. And they didn't come back. We reported them missing, of course, and in a few days after that, the police asked my mom and me to come down to the station. That's when they revealed that they'd run Aunt Linda and Ethan's DNA through their database and came up with 2 more exact matches to a Jane and John Doe, whose bodies were found within 50 miles of each other, and the original Jane Doe. All of them died about 5 years ago. Once is a mistake or maybe a weird freakish coincidence, but 3 times? The police were baffled. They asked us for all the information we could give them on my aunt's family. They specifically wanted to know what they were doing 5 years ago. All we could tell them is that they'd gone on a family vacation that year and had been gone a week longer than they'd planned. But otherwise, we had nothing useful. It's been a few months since then. The police have no answers for us, and we have no answers for them. I keep waiting for Bex to call or show up, or any of them really. But it's like they vanished off the face of the earth. The worst part is that there's nothing I can do. I've done so much research to try to find something that can explain what's going on, but I can't come up with any theory that makes sense. Nothing grounded in reality, anyway. All I wanted to know is if I'm part Irish, and instead I ended up discovering that my family isn't at all what it seemed. I keep hearing knocking on my window at 3 a.m. every night. By user TooGhosty. Every night I keep hearing this weird tapping sound coming from my bedroom window. It always wakes me up in the middle of the night. It gets me so irritated by the sound that I've gotten up from my bed to check what on earth is making the sound. I swear to God that I wish I did not pull back that dreadful curtain to look outside, because what waited on the other side is something so terrifying no human being should ever see. Once I pulled back the curtain, there was a little girl looking into my window. But this wasn't a happy, cheerful girl. No, this was literally pure evil. It was dark outside, but light enough that I was able to see some of her features. Her face was covered by her black hair, so it was impossible to see her facial features. Her skin looked pale, as if it'd been dead for a while, and her clothes were white, as if she was wearing a wedding dress or a nightgown. I stood there frozen, unable to move until she started to move her hands. Me looking at her horrified and dreading on what was about to happen. I tried to tear my eyes away from whatever this thing is. It's like I was paralyzed and unable to move. She moved her hands closer to her face until she revealed her face to me. And what I saw was terrifying. She had menacing eyes, darker than the night itself. A big, smiling, stitched-up mouth that looked like it reached from ear to ear. and her face looked so pale and wrinkly as if she'd been dead for a long, long time. This scared me so bad, and what she did next was something that was completely unexpected. She frickin' began to bang on the window with her hands as she stared at me with her evil, menacing look that it made me fall on the floor screaming and near the verge of crying because I was thinking, what is that? I was so terrified that I ran out of my room to my bathroom to hide and to calm down. I stayed in there for over an hour until I felt brave enough to go back in there to see if she was still there, and when I did, she was gone. The one thing I learned from this is never look outside your window at 3 a.m. in the morning. Hey Ben, written by user BurntSchmidt. My dad died in 1993. I was 10 years old. Months after his death, I would continue to have dreams about him. Mostly not so good dreams. I also felt a feeling of dread passing by the living room at night to go to the kitchen to get a drink. During one such occurrence, I walked out of the kitchen and I swear I saw him sitting in his recliner chair in the dark, staring at me. It was a very quick moment. I looked up, saw it, and ran to my room, locking the door and hiding under my covers. I had a friend named Ben. My dad used to always mock Ben for being so skinny. I'd get home from Ben's house, and at the dinner table, my dad would ask me questions like, what colored dress was Ben wearing today? He was a rugged, rough, and tumble guy. 3 years had passed. Ben was over at my house one night for a sleepover. We each had sleeping bags and would sleep in the living room. Mine at the foot of his old chair, which was now mine. We went to sleep. Suddenly, I was shook awake. It was Ben. He kept whispering my name in an almost alarmed tone, panicked even. As I awoke from my stupor, I asked him, what the hell is wrong with you? I woke right up when I saw the terror and confusion in his eyes. The light above the oven was always on at night in the kitchen, so I could make out his facial expressions. What did you want? He asked, annoyed. What? Confusion grew even more prevalent in his expression. What did you want? He asked, over and over. And I told him I said nothing to him, over and over. I told him he just woke me up. I saw fear wash over his face as he sat in silence for what seemed like a while. Dude, he began, I thought it was you. But what? I asked, annoyed that I'd been woken up. Get to the damn point already. It's the middle of the freaking night. I felt it, he said. Someone just whispered, hey Ben, in my ear, and I thought it was you. No, man, not me. You must have been dreaming. Then he said, no, man, I was awake. I just come back from the kitchen getting a drink. I shut my eyes, and someone whispered that in my ear. Come to think of it. What? I asked, one final time before completely ignoring him. Well, it sounded just like your dad. This jolted me fully awake, and I sat up and I looked into his face. We both were terrified. I never told him about the chair, nor did I tell him that in the moments before he woke me up, I dreamt my dad showed up on our front porch, that he never died, just left and came back. He woke me up out of that dream to tell me this. Ben has maintained the same story for 25 years. I believe it was simply my dad messing with him. Either way, neither of us got much sleep that night. At least I didn't. Scary Cabin Retreat Story. Written by Alma the Lab 19. What you're about to read did not happen to me, but a friend. My name is Elijah. My best friend is Nate. We have been best friends ever since about 4 years old. Nothing could split us apart. In high school, I met Bonnie. Things evolved pretty quickly, and she became my girlfriend not long after we met. Her best friend was Jessica, Jess for short. She and Nate really liked each other. They got together too. We had our own group of 4, unbreakable, unstoppable, and just awesome. After graduating from high school, we didn't go our separate ways like most friends do. We stuck together. We couldn't split apart. We needed each other. All of us went to the same college, Oregon State University. My parents died when I was young. Since then, my uncle has been looking after me. He was a professional dog trainer. He was the one that got me Alma when I got admitted into college. She was a white Labrador. He had a cabin up in Mount Hood National Forest, about 2 hours from our college. My uncle would probably go there twice a year, for Christmas and Thanksgiving. I asked him if he could let me and my friends spend a weekend there. Obviously, my Uncle Terry said yes, but as long as we leave the place just like we had found it. I promised him that everything will be in place by the time we left. Friday, June 12th, 1431. We were all packing up. We loaded everything into my SUV and got on the road. Alma was with us. I was driving, Bonnie was in the front seat, and Nate, Jess, and Alma were in the back. The whole road they were laughing, listening to music, and talking. Nothing out of the ordinary. Friday, June 12th, 1812. The road was longer than expected. We had to make a few stops. There was even a minor crash on the way there, and we had trouble finding the cabin. Once we arrived, we unpacked. I took a shower, and all of us got in the living room. It had been raining, so it was quite cold. Nate helped me get a fire started in the fireplace. I grabbed some beers. Before we left, all of us were over 21. Picture this. Best friends, drinking beer, having a good time by themselves, not caring about anything in the world. Friday, June 13th, 0403. After countless hours of drinking and laughing, we all went to bed, where I'm sure you can imagine what happened. Saturday, June 13th, 12:57. Nate came to wake me up. Me and Bonnie have been sleeping way too much. The cabin had an amazing pull-out back. All of us got undressed, and no, I don't mean like just undies and a bra. We were fully naked. That was the amount of confidence we had. We weren't afraid to show each other a little too much. After swimming for an hour or so, I started to make the barbecue I brought from home. Nate looked at me and said, "You sure you don't want me to make it?" I said, "Eat something you cooked. I'd rather starve." We all had a good laugh at that one, even Alma. She couldn't wait for the food to be ready. Nate and Jess ate breakfast, same as Alma. All the while, me and Bonnie were in bed. Saturday, June 13th, 1741. I cooked the barbecue, we ate, and decided to take a walk through the forest. We were laughing so hard and had so much fun that by the time we got back to the cabin, I realized Alma wasn't with us. Me and Nate went out looking for her while the girls stayed back at the cabin. She was a trained dog and always followed me or made her way back to me. I knew something was wrong when she disappeared. We were gone for about 30 minutes when Nate got a call from Jess that she saw someone from the second floor. He was in the tree line surrounding the cabin. The guy had a brown hoodie, green pants, and gloves. The girls hadn't felt good about it. I told Nate to rush back and that I'll find Alma. Somehow, right after he ran off, I spotted her. She was stuck in between a slingshot tree. I got her out and we started running towards the cabin. Saturday, June 13th, 1838. I got to the tree line in front of the cabin. I knew that if Alma saw the guy, she would bark. Even though she was a Labrador, she had very protective instincts and warned me about every sketchy thing. I took her to the car and locked her in. I didn't want the guy to hurt her. Don't worry, the car wasn't boiling or anything. Besides, I left the window slightly open. I picked up a branch from the ground, went to the front window of the house, and looked inside. I could see blood. Upon closer inspection, I noticed Nate was holding his leg, covered in blood. The girls were both crying. The guy was holding a gun to his head. I couldn't hear a thing from there, but then, in a blink of an eye, while my veins were pumped with adrenaline, I had a revelation. The bathroom window from the first floor was open. My uncle told me about it, and that it needed fixed because it got stuck. I went there. It was on the right side of the main entrance. I climbed through, trying to make as little sound as possible, while opening the door very, very slowly, and clinging to the tree branch as hard as I could. I thought of every possible scenario that could come out of this situation. I was able to open the door just enough to squeeze through without it squeaking. When I got close enough, I hit the guy over the head with the branch. He fell straight to the floor, dropping the gun. Bonnie got a hold of the gun and gave it to me. I was pointing it at him while Jess called 911. Me. What do you want? The guy. Nothing. Nothing. Why are you being like this? Me. You shot my friend and terrified the people I care about. Why? The guy. Jesus, I'm sorry, okay? I didn't mean for any of this to happen. Can you please just let me go? I swear I won't do anything. Me. The cops will deal with you. Feel lucky I'm not shooting you right now. All of this was going down while Nate was screaming, "Shoot him, Eli! What the frick, man?" I swear that if he hurt my dog or killed Nate, I would have blown his brains out right there and then. Saturday, June 13th, 1859. The cops got there. They arrested the guy. He was bleeding pretty badly from the hit over the head I applied to him. He was okay, however. They rushed Nate to the local hospital and he needed surgery. I called my uncle and told him everything. He said he was terribly sorry, but I replied, "It's okay, Terry. I guess not everything will be in place by the time we'll be leaving." He had a small laugh and asked me about getting home. The aftermath. After that, we had to go through a lot of court visits, each of us testifying against him, helping to put him behind bars. He got 29 years in prison for unlawful possession of a gun, breaking and entering, trespassing, discharging a gun, among other things. Apparently, he was screaming at Bonnie, Jess, and Nate things like, "Where's the other fricker?" Or, "If you don't tell me, I will blow his frickin' head off. I shot him once, don't think I won't do it again." Nate's surgery went well. He recovered pretty nicely. But unfortunately, he had to give up football. His dream of making it to the NFL was shattered. I got through the tough situation pretty easily. I was more angry than scared. The guy got what he deserved. The girls still have nightmares about the whole thing, but we do the best we can to comfort them. That's what boyfriends are there for, right? Since then, we've been up to the cabin several times, but my uncle has installed security cameras and other security instruments. The only thing that guy was looking for was a watch he saw my uncle wear once on Christmas, when he got in his car to leave the cabin. I still can't believe someone would throw their life away for just a frickin' watch. Home Alone, written by user BloodRed287. I don't think I have to say this, but I swear the story is completely true. So this happened a few years ago. When I was in 5th grade going into 6th grade, I started piano lessons. I absolutely hated playing the piano. The organ/piano player at my church offered me free lessons because my mom helped out a lot. He was a very nice man. I just hated playing the piano. My family bought an old piano from someone my family knew so I would be able to practice for an hour at home every day. One night near Christmas, when my brother was at a friend's house and my parents were at a dinner party for my dad's work, I was home practicing piano. The only lights that were on were the one on top of the piano so I could see the music and the dim lights from the Christmas tree. My back was to the door. To my right was the hallway that leads to the bedrooms. On my left was the living room where the tree was. There was no sound other than me occasionally hitting a key. I started having this weird feeling of dread when I looked down the hallway. That's when I started hearing something that was creeping me the frick out. It sounded like breathing. I kept trying to convince myself it was just a fan, but I was still unsure. I sat at the piano and started really practicing, just in case there really was a person down there waiting for me to walk down the hall. I had seen a few horror movies, so I knew not to move near a sound. A few minutes later, I told myself out loud that I should get some water. So I stood up and walked to the kitchen that was on the other side of the wall. I didn't have a phone in 6th grade, so I would usually use my parents' or house phone. The second I stood up, I heard a small gasp-like sound coming from the hallway. I pretended not to hear it. In the biggest drawer closest to the floor, my dad kept a few of his smaller tools and nails and stuff. I remember seeing a large box cutter type thing, and I grabbed it. Then I grabbed the house phone that was in the kitchen. I accidentally grabbed the phone too hard, causing me to hit a button that let out a beep. The sound is never really that loud, but with it being nighttime and me being home alone, it was almost deafening to me in my panic state. I then heard a low grunt-like sound coming from the hall, then footsteps. My flight or flight instinct kicked in, mixing with my adrenaline, and I ripped open the sliding glass door and ran to the side of the house. Basically flying over the fence, I dropped the box cutter in the process. I ran as fast as I could down the block because I could hear him trying to get over the fence. I looked back like an idiot and saw the silhouette of what I'm guessing was a 6-foot-tall man chasing me. I started screaming bloody murder while trying to dial 911, but I was too far away from my house for the phone to work. That's when I saw one of my neighbor's lights come on, and I ran over and started banging on the door. I quickly looked to see where the man was, and he started sprinting the opposite way. My neighbor let me in to call the police and helped calm me down. I had somehow escaped with my life, with only a few minor scrapes and cuts on my knees and feet. When the police got to my house, they figured out how the man got in. My brother had accidentally left his window cracked open, and the man was able to cut open the screen and open the window the rest of the way. They also found a rope, duct tape, and multiple knives on the ground of the hallway. My neighbor across the street had a camera facing the road because people had been stealing his mail. The police looked through the footage and found one man that would watch our house for a few minutes every few hours for a week. He knew I was home alone that night. For the next few weeks, they had cops watching our house until we moved. They never caught the man, but he is the reason I now have severe anxiety and paranoia. The Girl in the Attic, written by user BurntSchmidt. My ex and I rented an Airbnb in Maryland in 2012. It was a rustic, old little house, 2 blocks from the beach. The floors and banisters were made of and smelled of wood. We were to stay there for 4 days. On our first night, after we turned out the lights, we began to hear noises above us. Imagine the sound of a quarter hitting and then spinning around on a hardwood floor. Collectively, at the same time, we both asked, "What is that?" Pop, spin. Pop, spin. Pop, spin. Somebody was up there. "Hello?" I yelled out. Silence. Then after 10 seconds or so, it began again. Pop, spin. Should we call the police? Not yet. Shh. Let's keep listening. It continued. "This is really scaring me," my ex said. "Let me go check." "Oh my God, babe, be careful," she cried out, gripping her covers. I turned on my phone light and pulled down the attic staircase. I reluctantly climbed up. Then halfway up, pop, spin. "Holy crap. Oh God, I hear it," she screamed. "Hello?" Once again, it stopped. I went up the remainder of the stairs and stood there, shining my light over stacked boxes, cobwebs, and a wooden wall. And then right behind me, pop, spin. I turned and shined my light at the floor. A spinning quarter was traveling speedily towards my feet. Then tee-hee-hee, the laugh of a little girl. Frick. I didn't even bother to shine the light up at her. I bolted down the stairs and began packing us up, absolutely panicked. "What did you see?" my ex kept asking. "It doesn't matter. Get out of here. That's what does. We left the house, booked a hotel, and never went back. My great-great-grandfather served in World War I, but I wasn't allowed to read his diary. I now know why. Written by user Numa_Bellum. My family history is not remarkable. Removed from Offaly to Gloucester in 1840, where we live to this day. The only somewhat interesting story in my family happened to be my great-great-grandfather Jack during the First World War. Grandfather Jack died long before I was born, but he wrote it all down in a diary. Of course, as a child, they never let me read his journal or even told me stories from it. Whenever I asked why, they always told me because I was too little to read about the war. They weren't wrong, though for some reason that explanation never satisfied me. One day, when I was about 11, my prepubescent rebelliousness and curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to read it. I also had prepubescent cowardice, and was deathly afraid of being caught. Thus, at around 4 in the morning, I crept to the family living room, opened the creaky bookcase, then pulled out, dusted off, and started reading the ancient text. I knew Grandfather Jack fought in the Somme by eavesdropping. Having limited time yet an extensive history of World War I for being 11, I flipped to a page titled 1 June 1916 and quickly read till 17 July 1916, when he was able to write again after his injury. I have here some notable entries. 2 June 1916. We attacked yesterday at the Jerry's New. Providence was with me, and I got out with only a couple of bruises. Others weren't so lucky. I look at it now, and all I see are gray fields and a crater nearly covered by corpses. Barbed wire stretched forever, spiking limbs of departed souls. It's our own slice of hell. Ethan, Michael, Alfred, Tim, John, and Charles died, and they were left unburied. 10 June 1916. The Jerrys gassed us again. I hate gas. You can't see through it, especially with that mask, but you can still hear. You can still hear the cries of agony and pain. It's the worst when you know the voices. Today I heard David. 23 June 1916. We were shelled again. It makes me almost wish for death. At least then I can have quiet. Marcus died. His hull collapsed and suffocated him. 8 July 1916. Evan got Trent's foot a couple of days ago. One of his blisters got infected and he died. Should have cut the foot. 17 July 1916. I haven't written anything because I have been in the hospital. A week ago we were gassed, but it didn't lift. We looked at each other, thinking that it must be something new. Soon we noticed that we couldn't hear the guns or anyone else. Someone got up and tried to get out of it. Once he passed the gas, we couldn't hear him. We also never saw him again. At least then I can have quiet. When someone went to look for him, we heard screams. We decided to sit and wait. I suggested we get to know each other so as to ease the tension. There were 2 Frenchies named Jacques and Louis who were headed south and spoke good English. There was a Scot named Frank and an Irishman called Sean. There were 5 other Englishmen, Thomas, Jacob, Joshua, Percy, and Theodore. Frank pulled out a deck of cards, but before we started to play, we stopped. I didn't know why, but we did. Then we heard a sloshing sound. We turned and saw a figure calmly walking towards us through the mud. He wore an English uniform and looked enough like us. "Hello," he said. Something was off about him. He wasn't right. I couldn't see clearly through my gas mask, but everything about him made me uneasy. Apparently, I was the only one. Percy walked up to him and offered his hand. The stranger took it. I thought to myself, I'm ridiculous. He's done nothing wrong. We all then introduced ourselves to him, but I still felt uneasy even as I shook his hand. It was how he moved. He was so stiff. He introduced himself as Mortimer. We talked about home and played cards the rest of the day. At night, we discussed trying to escape the gas. "We should stay and wait. 2 of us already tried, and that we haven't seen them since," I said. "I came through. They probably were shot," explained Mortimer. "Then how come you didn't see them?" I cried. I shouted when I said that. "Sorry." After my scene, all but I decided to move out. "Jack and I will stay behind to look after the post in case an officer comes along and asks where we were," said Mortimer. Mortimer looked at me. I decided right then that something was wrong. Despite my protest, the rest of the group agreed to escape. All this time, we kept our gas masks on. After they left, Mortimer and I sat in silence, save for the occasional attempt at small talk, till nightfall. While we sat there, I began to notice more and more things about Mortimer. Along with his stiff movement, Mortimer had his entire body covered. He wore gloves, and his coat was fully buttoned and covered his neck. I could only see his eyes, which on closer inspection were glassy, and upon closer inspection I noticed he never blinked. When night fell, he confronted me about my observations. "I see you have noticed my peculiarities, and I must say I am impressed. You are the first one to not follow the fog, or I guess you think it is gas." "What do you mean?" I asked. "Well, of course I'm not human, just partially human," said Mortimer. I summoned all the courage I had and replied with, "Then who are you?" "Well, you see," said Mortimer, "I'm only partially human because I am dead." "Then how are you here?" I exclaimed. "I am resurrected as a spirit with a new purpose, to bring people to death. You see, beyond that gas is almost certain," Mortimer calmly said. "Am I dead?" "What do you mean, almost certain death?" I asked, confused and terrified. "Not yet," replied Mortimer. "And I say almost certain because beyond that gas is the one I answer to. Usually you die. However, you have figured me out. You have nearly cheated death." I was astonished. "What do you mean, nearly cheated? And who do you answer to? What happened to the others? Why did one scream?" "Calm down," said a rather annoyed Mortimer. "In war, everyone has a chance to cheat death. The greater ones don't ask, though, that the war caused unfair death. They come up with people like me, people who have died in war, and now give others the same chance they got. All they have to do is figure out that the dead people who were sent don't belong among them. It rarely happens, but when it does, I am permitted to share with them what is out there. You have nearly cheated death, because all you have to do is escape the gas, and the one I answer to. We let that person scream so as to stop people from going through the gas. That is all I can say." "Well, who's the one you answer to?" I asked. "It doesn't matter," said Mortimer. "All you have to do is leave any weapon you have here, close your eyes, put your hands behind your head, and walk, not run, walk through the gas. If you don't, you will die. I cannot say any more. Do you understand?" I nodded my head. "Good. Now leave," said Mortimer. I had so many more questions, but I trusted Mortimer. I left my weapon and my knife there, put my hands behind my head, closed my eyes, and walked forward into the gas. I heard many things: screams from people and animals, sounds of waves, wind and tumbled rocks, sounds of gun firing and swords clanging, and many other things of this world. But I also heard other things, things I cannot describe. things I wish to forget. I felt the one that wanted were answers to touch me. It said things that I could not understand but wanted to. All I had to do was open my eyes. I missed it and hated it. Eventually, I woke up on a hospital bed. They told me that I had been hit by shrapnel and they were moving me. I didn't get much sleep that night. The Ghost Car, written by Faelwolf. This happened many years ago, going on 40 now actually, when I was stationed at a somewhat remote airbase. I won't mention names or precise locations as there is another person involved who has not given permission to share their name and who wants to forget the whole thing ever happened. My wife at the time and I were driving to the base one night. It was around 11:30 p.m. Don't know why the time has stuck with me for so many years. There's only one 2-lane road going to and from the base, with very little on it. As we passed the lone gas station, a couple in a pewter gray Volkswagen Rabbit pulled out in front of us, forcing me to swerve to avoid a collision. I saw the couple in the car, a man driving and a woman with blonde hair, and managed to take note of their license plate, as they were pretty close enough that my headlights clearly lit up the rear of the car. A moment later, the car simply vanished. After a few minutes went by, my wife said, "Did you see that?" I replied that I did, and I gave her the license plate number and the date and time to write down. The next day, I spoke with a friend of mine who worked at the local police department and gave him the license plate number, only telling him that they had forced us off the road that night before, and I wanted to give the info to pass along. He came back the next day very upset and asked if I was trying to be funny. He then went on to tell me that a couple matching that description, driving that exact car, with that license plate, had pulled out in front of another car 1 year to the minute of the time we had our incident, and had struck the other car and rolled, killing both of them. I had no prior knowledge of this, as it happened before me being stationed there. I finally told him the whole story, and we agreed to never speak of it again. You may see them too, written by Rvynelx on YouTube, spelled Rvynelx. I'm a 25-year-old female. I've been a caregiver for 6 years now. I've worked in a few different places, retained and reintroduced to new residents. The first CBRF I ever worked for was a 13-bed facility. A CBRF takes in more than just geriatrics who can no longer live alone. It handles anywhere from addicts to dementia to old age. In order to become a DSP, you have to go through about 4 weeks of training. Direct support professionals go through basic first aid, administering medications, basic fire safety, and dementia support classes. All the training classes never quite prepare you for being on the floor. During dementia training, they taught us about dementia with Lewy bodies. It's a degenerative disease that causes auditory and visual hallucinations. We ran through different scenarios on how to redirect a resident while they were having these episodes. One example was of a resident chasing after their past loved ones. Often they wander away from the home and end up lost. We had to stay vigilant in order to keep them safe. The main thing was we were never to discredit them or their hallucinations. We were taught to play along and redirect. Telling them, "No, it's made up," or "no one is there," can cause them to fly into a violent rage and break down into inconsolable tears. When I first started on the floor, I met one of the first dementia patients right away. Her name was Beverly. My first interaction with her was her coming up behind me and whispering to me, "You better take care of them, or I'll have to kill you." She then pointed at the floor as if someone was standing there. I nervously laughed and ran to my administrator's office. She explained to me that Beverly was harmless, but she often saw children. She reminded me of my training and to play along, but then she added, "You may see them too." I continued working there for a few more months without much of an incident. I worked the second shift, so there were many uncomfortable nights. While vacuuming the hallway, I heard the door alarm go off. Every time someone opens one of the main doors to the outside, an alarm would ring. I looked out the window to see Beverly, in nothing but a nightgown, in the middle of a Wisconsin winter. She was bent over at the waist, walking slowly, as if a small child was holding her hand and leading her down the parking lot. I quickly ran outside to catch up with her and tried to console her. She was confused when she saw me and asked where the little girl went. I explained to her that her mom came and picked her up and quickly brought her back inside. A few weeks later, some of the other staff were talking between shift change, and I overheard them talking about Beverly's little girl. Turned out I wasn't the only one that had seen Beverly have an episode. But then they went on to talk about the daycare center next door. I hadn't been working there for long, so one of the veteran DSPs went on to explain about the original daycare center that used to be in the new one's place. I guess it burnt down and some of the kids got hurt. The veteran DSP wondered if there was any correlation between what Beverly was seeing and the old daycare center. The rest of the group of the DSPs went on talking about weird sightings they had seen in our building, always catching glimpses of someone small out of the corner of their eyes, things going missing, and even being misplaced. We had even had a resident wake up screaming in the middle of the night, saying he saw a woman on his ceiling staring at him. When I started my shift that night, I was left with the veteran DSP. All the other DSPs had left for the night. I stayed in the kitchen cleaning up after day shift while the veteran was passing meds. I heard the back door open and ran to the window to the back hallway to look. It was Beverly. It was snowing really hard that night, so it was hard to see out, but she was in her bent-over stance being led away by something again. This time, I saw another person with her, actually holding onto her hand, a little girl with blonde hair. I yelled for the veteran, and we both ran outside to look for Beverly. We looked all around the building and found nothing. The vet asked if I was sure I saw what I saw. I swore that I had seen Beverly. I even heard the door alarm go off again. The veteran suggested we go back inside and check to see if maybe she got back in without us noticing. When we got to her room, we both had the air escape us. We found Beverly on the floor, dead. I won't go into too much detail of how she looked, but it still haunts me to this day. She was holding a photo. It was a picture of her daughter when she was little, and her daughter had long, blonde hair. I hope you all enjoyed all of our haunted tales this evening. If you would like to discuss any of the stories on tonight's podcast, I'm always live during and after the podcast every Sunday night starting at 7 p.m. Join our community on our Facebook group page and YouTube channel. If you have a haunting story of your own or artwork and you want to submit it for consideration for the future show, drop me a line on our Reddit page or email address. All our links are below in the description. Special thanks to Darken Mood, Darken_M00D, for all his wonderful art that you can check out on his Reddit page. I want to thank all our brave storytellers, for without them there would be no show. A detailed list of story credits are in the description. But most importantly, I want to thank you, the listener. for taking time out of your day to listen to Haunted Tales from the Old Rocking Chair. I hope you have a wonderful night, and as always, sweet dreams. Okay, Christina, shush. Okay, that's the show this evening. As always, I always want to thank the Riff Radio Network. That's the production company that allows me to do this. I also want to thank the people that do listen. I couldn't share it out. My computer's freaking out for some reason tonight. So anybody that's listening, please share it out. I greatly appreciate it. I'm going to try later. Usually I try to share it out while I'm doing the live, but I'm dealing with like a 7-year-old laptop that doesn't cooperate 90% of the time. So, yeah, today it's having a tantrum. It's having a 2020 tantrum. But I will try to share it out later if it allows me. I think I figured out the audio issue because before I was playing the podcast through my phone and using my phone as a camera, but since the recent update with Facebook, it wasn't letting me do that last time, so then I was doing it through my laptop, and it was like hearing its own speaker when it was trying to play the live, because I used the laptop, it's easier to type on than the phone, so it was kind of echoing off the speaker, and I had to try to figure out what was going on and mute it, and it's I can't wait till I get a decent computer. That's all I can say. Then I can do multiple things at the same time and it not freak out and try to shut down on me. So, well, anyway, I'm rambling. I appreciate anybody that listens in. Make sure that you're looking at that Facebook group page because all our updates are on there. Check out the Riff Radio Network page for the channel or the network. They put all the updates with all the new shows that are coming out on there. We have some exciting new shows coming up and some changes, which is really cool. We're back to almost a complete full schedule, which is exciting, and really great hosts on there. If you want to hang out later, check out Howie Odell's The Orion Effect, which comes on right now on his channel. All right. Well, I won't take up any more of your time. You have a wonderful Sunday, and as always, sweet dreams.